So Martin Luther King passed through your class, is what I understood you to say.
No, we passed by each other.
So that I can make sure I'm accurate.
He was in the class.
Okay.
And
That you taught?
yes, I
Okay.
taught at Morehouse College. It was in the Department of Religion. Now, at the time, I was not aware of the fact that I taught him. I didn't know that.
Okay.
And it was not until perhaps 10, 15, or 20 years later that I was in Atlanta, Georgia, along with my debate team, and we had dinner. And I said to my students, look, there's Martin Luther King. And I felt, a little good.
Excited.
I recognized him as a person.
Right.
And before dinner was over, he came up to our table, stuck out his hand and said, Dr. Freeman, you don't remember me, but I remember you. You taught me. And he went on to describe it, and I looked at him and said, I did. And from then on, we were acquainted. We knew each other as persons, and we had contact with each other as persons. And when Irma Hughes that was the time when they had both baccalaureate and community and commencement services together.
Okay.
They don't have the baccalaureate service now, but Mrs. Hughes had a service down at on Darling, St. John.
Here in Houston?
Here in Houston, and Martin was the commencement speaker, and I was the baccalaureate speaker.
Is that right?
I spoke before he did, and when he got up to speak, he said, Dr. Freeman has had a great influence over me, and he recalled the time that he attended my class. Now, my younger brother, not younger, youngest brother is the conductor of the Czechoslovakia Symphony Orchestra.
Okay.
And he was in Oslo at the time that Martin received the award. And he saw him at the airport and started to go to speak to him. And he said, no, he doesn't know me, so I won't bother about speaking to him. And he said, well, I may not get another chance,
Right.
so I'll go up and speak to him. So my brother went up to Martin and stuck out his hand and said, Dr. King, you don't know me. And before he could finish, Martin said, oh, yes, I do. You are Tom Freeman's brother. So there was no question about identifying me
Exactly.
along with him. Yes.
Wow. Wow. You have such rich history as I read and learned more about you. And not only has Dr. Martin Luther King been influenced by you, but so has Barbara Jordan.
In fact, now you're a little more accurate
That's more like it.
in describing the relationship, because while I interacted with Martin for only one semester, I interacted with Barbara for 4 years.
Wow.
Taking her as a 16-year-old plastic student and molding her into the statue that she became. Yes.
Wow.
It's a very close relationship.
And what a statue she became,
Oh, yes.
not only in your classroom, but in the framework of America.
That's true, yes.
And because of her active life in Congress,
Certainly, yes.
she has certainly made a huge difference in our
And
African Americans.
mentioning the influence, at her funeral, I had the opportunity of just saying a few words. And as I departed, there was a person sitting next to another person who said to the other person, oh, he certainly does sound like Barbara.
So obviously her way of speaking, you had really imparted and implanted in her to the degree that others would identify your voice in her.
Yes, yes.
Wow. And she went on to do great and
Yes.
phenomenal things.
Yes. In fact, it was by way of the debate team that she was introduced to the level of participation that she achieved later on.
Okay.
On the debate, she was the first, not the only one. I started to say only, but that's not true.
Okay.
But the first woman who traveled with the debate team. The debate team consisted primarily of fellas.
Mm-hmm.
And in the days of restriction, young ladies didn't have the opportunities that young men had.
Right, but somehow you guys were able to.
Yes, and she was, the writers say that she was denied entrance to Harvard, which of course is not true.
Okay.
She never applied for Harvard. She and Otis King were on the debate team that went to Boston University.
Okay.
They won both debates. At that time, another one of my brothers was a student in the law school at Boston University.
Okay.
And my brother took her around Boston University. And after that experience, she said to me, Tom, that's where I want to go to school. And she made application for Boston and was accepted. She was never denied by Harvard. She didn't even apply to Harvard.
Didn't even apply at Harvard.
Yes.
Okay, so that's just a misconception, I guess,
Yes,
or something that we've had an opportunity now to clear up, I would say.
Yes.
I would
Those
say.
are the facts.
Yes, yes. Now, I want to ask you this. How did you actually become involved in debate? Because it's certainly taken a platform that has lasted throughout your life for well over 60 years.
That's right. Yes. Well, I came to Texas Southern University for 9 months. I came as an experiment.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to see how well a person trained in religion could operate on a state college campus where there was separation of church and state.
Mm.
And at the end of 9 months, I discovered that my experiment had worked. So there was no need of my staying. And
Okay.
I was ready to go. I assigned a debate for my class in logic. And members of the debate team went to Dr. Samuel Warren and told them that they had found a debate coach.
Mm.
And Dr. Warren called me into his office and said, Tom, I understand that you want to coach debate here. I said, oh, no. I'm not even going to be here, so I can't coach debate. I'm not going to be here, but for 9 months. Those students continued bombarding me, and I finally said to them, now, if you 4 fellows will be on the team, then I will coach you as long as I'm here.
Okay, that's good enough.
And so we worked for about 3 months, and I took them to the University of Chicago, and we won both debates.
Wow.
When I came back, Dr. Lanier, who was the first president, and Dr. Ina Bolton, who was then head of the department in which I was working, cornered me and said, Tom, you cannot leave. You have to stay. And so you need to go back and resign your position. Tell them that you aren't coming back because you're going to stay in
You
Texas.
had a change of heart, huh? You know what? One of the things that I realize in life is that oftentimes things will happen that will nudge and probe us into our destiny.
That's right. Yeah.
And certainly that was one of those times for this amazing guest, Dr. Thomas Freeman.
I didn't plan it. It was planned for me. And
It was God's divine purpose for your life. I would
Well,
certainly.
I would not say anything different. In fact, when I returned to my church to resign, I told them that I felt that it was a calling from God.
And I actually
So
read.
to leave,
Yes.
leave Virginia because my work was completed there and to go to Texas. And my presence in Texas has been to me a call from God, a call to render service to people, service on all levels, religious level, social level, educational level. And he has put me in this position so that I could be of service
Right.
everywhere I happen to have gone.
And speaking of being in service, everywhere you've gone, you actually had a background in theology
That's right.
that I don't think a lot of people necessarily know, because they know the debate guy,
That's right. Yeah.
Dr. You know, exactly, the
Yeah.
debate guy. But theology was actually.
The debate guy is just ancillary. It's not the real thing. I am professor of philosophy here at Texas Southern University, and I've been professor of religion at Rice University, and I've been professor of speech at Houston Community College, and none of that has involved debate.
But for some reason, debate tends to be the thing that you.
Because I suspect that attracts more attention than
Okay.
being a minister or being a teacher or being a professor.
So how do you feel about that?
Oh, I don't think that thinking about it as debate diminishes nor increases its value. It merely describes the situation.
Right.
When I'm interacting with my congregation, they don't think about the debate team. They think about their minister who is working with them. When I'm dealing with my students, and they aren't thinking about debate. They're thinking about the issue at the time.
Right.
So it describes a portion of my activity, but to limit, to say that my activity is epitomized in the debate, gives to debate a position that I don't think it holds in my life. I just happen to be the debate coach, that's all.
Isn't that something?
But as a debate coach, I'm working with people to develop students. I'm not working for them to be debaters. I'm working for them to be excellent persons. And by way of debate and the kinds of training that is done in debate, they become competent persons. That's my goal, to develop competent persons. Persons who can stand up to and against anybody, anywhere. And that's one of the reasons that they're able to achieve and rise to the top, because of that motivation.
Yes.
They're not just there to debate. They're there to become better than they are, with the hope that when they've gone through the rigor of the debate, they will have those competencies that will enable them to stand up against anybody.
Because of the seed that you have sown in them through the gift that God has given you.
That's only part of it, because if they didn't do something themselves, they would never grow.
It takes effort.
Yes. And for them, much effort on their part, because there's a great distance between where they were and where they get to be after rigorous study and application.
Yes.
Without that rigorous study and application, development would not be possible. And on the debate team at TSU, it's open to any and every student. You don't have to have any previous training or experience. You can come there with little abilities or skills. Anybody can join. But now whether anybody stays is another
Is a whole
question.
different ball game.
Those who think that it is play soon run away. But
Okay.
those who realize that it's work and want to work stay. And as a result of the experiences that they've had, they say that it's the best thing that happened to them while they were in college.
Wow. Let me ask you this. You've accomplished and achieved so many things that have made a difference in the lives of so many people and students. What do you feel is your greatest accomplishment to this day?
I don't measure anything that I have done. If what I have done is of value to somebody else, let them put the stamp on that. I don't know. It's hard for me to get into the minds of those whom I have touched, to know the kind of influence that I've had, so I can put one against the other and say, this is the greatest. Mm-hmm. No, I don't know. I'm unable to answer your question.
And you know what? That's a very humble response.
Well, I didn't
That is a very
evaluate it.
humble
I
response.
stated it.
Now, you know, one of the things that I read about you, when you were asked a question very similar to that question, your remark was all the trophies really doesn't mean anything. It's what has happened as a result of the trophy.
Yes.
With those students.
Well,
that's what's important,
well,
not the fact that
that remains my point of view.
Mm-hmm.
I don't train students to receive trophies. I train students to develop those skills and competencies which, if they are exhibited, will bring trophies. The trophies do not represent the apex. Mm-hmm. They represent the effort on the way to the apex. All that happened along the way, all the experiences that they are exposed to, all the problems that they face and overcome are what represents a goal for me in working with students, overcoming stubborn habits, learning how to do research, learning how to make sacrifices, learning how to interact with other people, and even learning how to take defeat. But you see, although we win many trophies, on the way to winning many trophies, there are many defeats.
Right.
And so they need to learn how to be a good winner and also a good loser. Hoping, however, that there will more times there will be winners than losers.
Right. And you know, when you talk about that and you speak about winning and losing, when you stay in the game, you have the opportunity to win the game.
Yes.
But if you get out of the game,
you neither win nor lose.
There you go. And you said something very profound in the biography that I read about you when it comes to winning and losing, or it's just you don't. If you stop, you will never have the opportunity to win, and you give in to something greater that can defeat you. But when you're able to persevere and push forward, no matter how many times you lose, what determines the winner is the one that gets up the most after a loss.
That's right. And that reminds me of a young lady who was on the team for 3 years and never broke. And when you say broke, you mean moved from preliminary round to the next round, to the final round. She never broke. And then said to me, Doc, this is my last time. If I don't break this time, I am going to quit the team. And that English that year won first place in extemporaneous speaking.
Wow.
She had given herself to success, not defeat, though she was ready to give up.
Right.
But when she won the first place, there was no happier person.
Something was ignited within her, I'm
because
certain.
she had won first place.
Amazing. You know what? I'm enjoying this dialogue so much. And I'm so looking forward to much more continued dialogue as we sit here with the amazing and legendary Dr. Thomas Freeman. We'll be back in just a moment with more of Let's Talk About It with my amazing guest, Mr. Thomas Freeman. Hello and welcome back to this edition of Let's Talk About It with my legendary guest, Mr. Dr. Freeman. Dr. Freeman, welcome back to Let's Talk About It.
Thank you very kindly.
Yes, sir. I wanted to ask you, what do you think could make the greatest positive change in our African American culture today?
I don't think I will be able to answer the question in evaluating what I can merely suggest some things. And the first suggestion would be a recognition that we have not arrived yet. And because we have not arrived yet, there is every reason to put forth greater efforts to achieve. Greater efforts by our churches in strengthening and increasing the spiritual vitality of our communities, efforts on the part of schools to develop an educational system that will provide the kinds of education that will enable members of our race not only to succeed, but to succeed in a multiracial society. I think that, and that's for the church and for the school, and then for the home. For the homes to develop a strategy for home training.
Certainly.
So that the problems that we experience will not likely to be as great. But you see, whereas
minimize, in other words.
Good home training, you have the foundation for each of the other steps. A recognition of the role played by the church, a recognition of the role played by the home, a recognition of the role played by the schools should help us in developing our society.
Right.
Another thing which could be related to all three of them is the sense of values that we possess. Somehow all three of them have to bring us to the point that we recognize that material values are not the only values in life, so that a child doesn't grow up saying, I must have a car. He grows up saying, I must have a life, a worthwhile life. Somehow we've got to change the perceptions of individuals. And another thing that I think might be of help to the entire race is to remember that we are brothers and sisters. Whether we know it or not, we are our brothers' keepers. We do have a responsibility. When we achieve, greater emphasis should be placed on shared achievement, so that if an opportunity is provided for a job in a ghetto, we will take that job rather than go behind a desk in a corporation whose business is just making money. And we will accept those positions that will help us improve the quality of life
Right.
among our people.
Right. Let me ask you another question. After having the opportunity to have a African American president, did you think a lot of changes would take place after President Barack Obama took office for the African American culture and for the world at large?
I think that most people did. I didn't. And as I said to someone earlier, I saw it as merely the operation of the political process. Here is the candidate who got the most votes. Well, he was black or white, did not matter. And his getting the presidency didn't change the racial attitudes that sought to keep him from getting the presidency. In fact, it accentuated the effort. So that being a black president did not mean to me what it might have meant to others implied in the question that you asked. I saw it as a movement in our democracy which made opportunity for somebody to win. And it happened to have been Obama. I am not among those who think that his election solved the racial problem.
Right.
I am not among those who blame him for the economy. I am not among those who would say, well, if we had a white president, it would be different. I am among those who recognize that the presidency is a political position. And if you don't play politics,
Okay.
you will never make it. He had a machinery behind him. Obama would have done nothing with Obama himself, but it was machinery that
Right.
had been organized, and that machinery was successful in its goal, both the first time and the second time too. And the machinery was more developed the second time. And because of the strength of the machinery and the strategies used,
Right.
he came out the winner. But not a black winner.
Just the winner.
Yes.
You know, and as we talk about this, it reminds me of the successful students that you've had in debate.
Yes.
It took preparation. It took coaching. It took strong machinery behind these kids to get them to the next level. No different than for our amazing president.
And they
President Barack
never
Obama.
won because they were black.
They won because they were, finish that sentence for me.
They won because they were better than somebody else. And many times, much better than their ranking showed. Well, you see, they competed not against their own race, but other races, and were judged not by members of their race, but by other races. But I tell my students, you be so good that if they don't give you first place, they won't be able to sleep during the night, but their conscience will be on them. See?
Wow.
So your job is to just be so outstanding that I wanted to give them second place, but I just couldn't,
Right.
because they were so good.
In the right, yeah. That is, and you know, that's so, I just, this dialogue is just simply amazing for me because you're imparting such wisdom in me. I'm like a sponge, soaking it all up. Because there are times in your life when you can't deny greatness. If this is greatness standing before you, and there's anything
If you have a conscience. Now,
if you have a conscience.
And you assume that everybody does have a conscience. You see? But in the same way, in the job market, you perform your work so well that he can't fire you.
It's undeniable.
He can't fire you and live with himself. So many times, if it left to me, she'd be gone. But I can't do it.
Right.
I can't do it.
You know, hence
And I believe you operate believing that people are good. You don't operate on some of their evil and prejudice.
Right.
They're fundamentally they're good. And you appeal to their goodness. And that's one of the reasons that Martin Luther King's program was a great success. He appealed to the moral consciousness of America. So, you can't do this because you're of America. You are founded on justice and mercy. You have to be merciful. You have to distribute justice because that is of your nature.
right.
So, yeah.
Right. I'm so enjoying this dialogue. And we're going to continue this dialogue in just a moment. We're going to come back with more of the amazing, legendary Dr. Freeman. So stick around, you guys, for more of Let's Talk About It with my awesome guest, Dr. Thomas Freeman. Hello and welcome back to this edition of Let's Talk About It with my amazing guest today, Dr. Thomas Freeman. Dr. Freeman, you have achieved so much in your lifetime. Let me ask you, is there anything else that Dr. Freeman would like to achieve in his lifetime?
If there is, I am not aware of it. I do not think of my life as an achievement. I only think of my life as an instrument for the achievement of others. If I am allowed the opportunity to continue to serving a congregation, if I am allowed the opportunity to continue serving a group of students, then I welcome that opportunity. And if God is willing and my health remains in a state that I would not be jeopardized and those whom I encounter would not be jeopardized, then I'm available to bring the service that I can. I am really not in control. It's what the circumstances and the situations allow me to do. I do not plan to just automatically remove myself from the situation. As long as I am in the situation, I will do the very best that I can to make a difference in the lives of those whom I encounter at church, whom I encounter in the community, whom I encounter at school, whom I encounter when I travel all over the world.
Wow. You know, one of the most beautiful things in life to me is being able to make a difference in the lives of others.
Yes.
When you're gone, your legacy lives on. The seeds you've planted
That's true, yes.
grow, and other seeds fall off from those seeds
Oh, yes,
and continue
definitely.
to grow.
And you never know which way your influence is going. You don't know that.
You don't know, but
Yeah.
because of your existence and your ability to plant seed
Yeah.
in those whom God has allowed you to meet, encounter, teach, coach, guide, because of that,
Yes.
your legacy will live forever. I wanted to ask you, now I know that you were a part of the learning process for the actors who were a part of the Denzel Washington film, The Great Debaters. How did you actually get involved in that?
I came to my office from a trip, and there was a note saying that Denzel Washington had called and would want me to call because I had just come from out of town. I was a little busy and didn't get a chance to return the call. And I went out of town again. And when I got back, there was a telephone call, and it said, Dr. Freeman, please call me. And somehow we called each other, and each time got an answering machine.
Okay.
Finally, he called and said, there are 3 numbers, and you can reach me at any one of the 3. Please call me, Dr. Freeman. I've got to talk to you. So finally, we were on the phone with each other.
Uh-huh.
And he said, this is Denzel Washington speaking. And Dr. Freeman, I've got to pick your brain. Won't you allow me to fly you down to our set so we can talk together? And I asked him when. And he mentioned a weekend, which was Sunday.
Okay.
Sorry, but I have to be in my church. I can't come down to Los Angeles or wherever you wanted me to come.
A very committed man.
And he said, well, that's all right. I'll fly to you. I'll fly to Houston and take you out to dinner. And I said, oh, you don't need to take me out to dinner. Now, if you want to come to my office, I'll be glad to talk with you.
Right.
But he went, no, I want to take you to dinner. And so his secretary arranged for dinner. We were to meet at, the Four Seasons downtown.
Absolutely.
We met. And at the appointed time, I go down and go up to the desk, and there's no Denzel Washington. Virgil's still there. And then they said, well, you go upstairs, maybe you'll find him. And as I was going upstairs, he crossed. And he walked up to me and said, Dr. Freeman. And I'm saying in my mind, how could he know me? He had on cap, so I didn't recognize him. And I said, come on, Dr. Freeman, come on, let's go. And so we had a private room for dinner. And after we had dinner, he questioned me and questioned me and questioned me and wrote notes as he questioned. And then he said, excuse me, and he went upstairs to the room and got another pad that he took notes on questions that he had raised with me. And during the course of conversation, I asked him, now, Denzel, how did you find me? And he said, God sent me to you. And then well, what do you want me to do? And then he outlined a 4-day boot camp that he on debate that he wanted me to conduct. And after he had outlined it, he turned to me and said, now, Dr. Freeman, will you do it? And I looked at him and I said, you told me that God sent you to me. Now, what do you think I'm going to say?
If God.
Yeah, I'm a servant of God. Now, what am I going to say other than yes?
Right.
And we worked out the 4-day camp, which I conducted, and his actors were involved in. And at the end of the session, he was very pleased because he wanted his actors to appear in the movie, not as actors. So when the listener saw the movie, they would think it was the real thing. And he said that was achievement, and he was grateful for it. Now, that's how I got involved.
That's how you got involved. And you know what? That was very successful, because when I watched the film on last evening and preparing myself to sit with you, I was so touched by the acting that took place. Yes. I actually felt the pain of those actors as the show progressed.
Yes.
And it led me to a level of compassion. Yes. As I watched it. And not only did it lead me to a level of compassion, but it also helped me to understand the power in determination.
Yes.
in the face
Of opposition.
of opposition.
Yeah.
It was simply amazing. And to know that I am actually sitting here today with Dr. Thomas Freeman to talk about the movie that I just watched on Saturday evening,
Yes.
I'm more than honored. More than honored. And I can't, more than honored. I want to ask you, as briefly as you can, what was how did you feel about playing a part in the film? How did you feel about that?
Well, really, I didn't play a part in the film. I only trained the actors to. I never dreamed that what I was doing was as significant as persons claim it to be after it was done. I was just doing what I normally do.
Okay. You were just doing Dr. Freeman.
Yes.
Dr. Freeman.
And I see it, then really I see it as an opportunity for the name of TSU to ascend in terms of national recognition.
Mm-hmm.
For you see, he didn't come to T.F. Freeman. He came to the TSU debate team coach. And without the TSU, there would be no T.F. Freeman debate coach. And in fact, he said that over on Oprah Winfrey's show. Oprah Winfrey asked him, why did he choose Texas Southern?
Mm-hmm.
And he said, because Texas Southern University has one of the best debate teams in the United States.
Why not?
And his appraisal of TSU in terms of its quality was a star in the cap of TSU.
Right.
TSU was catapulted into national significance merely because it was the training ground for the debaters of the great debaters.
Fantastic. We're going to be back in just a moment with more from this amazingly humble man, Mr. Dr. Freeman. All right, stick around. We'll be back with more of Let's Talk About It in just a moment. All right, welcome back to this edition of Let's Talk About It with the amazing Dr. Freeman. Dr. Freeman, I want to ask you, how do you feel about the African American youth today that are choosing to display themselves with pants hanging down and this type of thing? What do you feel about that?
I suspect what I feel about it can best be seen by my insistence that students don't come to my class that way. One's attire is important. I don't believe that clothes make the man, but I do believe that clothes may give an indication of the man. You used the term earlier about young people choosing to wear their pants on their hips. I don't think it's a choice. I think that it's a pattern of behavior which they follow because everybody else is doing it. They're dressing like everybody else. We have gotten away from the concern of our appearance so that one feels that he can wear anything any way he wants to wear it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that it's because there are young parents. I think that it goes largely out of the lack of direction, the lack of control over the children. So that instead of parents telling children what to do, children tell parents what they are not going to do. And you need a structured environment that establishes certain principles of action and some avenue whereby that can be enforced. We can't do it in the schools. We have to do it at home.
At home.
And even though children may call child protective agencies on us, we must not allow child protection agencies to determine the discipline that we ought to develop in our own homes. We are responsible for our children, not child protective agencies. And the degree to which we release and give up our responsibility, to that degree we will fail. Parents have to be parents. They have to learn how to discipline their children and at the same time reveal to their children that they love them. They have to embrace them in such a way that they feel that they are not the target of criticism, but that they are enveloped in a bond of love and friendly relationship. All of the fault is not on the child.
Absolutely not.
Some of it is on the persons responsible for bringing the children into the world. You see,
I feel like a lot of times they themselves, the parents, have not had that foundation themselves
that's
to
true.
see what it is like to raise my child in this manner. So then I ask, what is that solution?
Well, I don't know whether there is any one solution, but there again, we need to go back to reinvigorate reinvent the moral and social values that undergirded our society prior to the baby boomers. It may seem to be like turning back the clock, but if it's turning back the clock, it's turning back the clock so that it might go forward without breaking.
And sometimes we have to go back in order to go forward. Which brings me to this point. We're talking about the foundation of children.
Indeed.
I want to talk a little bit about your foundation and how you were raised.
Yes, believe it or not,
What influenced Dr. Freeman?
Believe it or not, I am from a large family. They don't make them that.
A family of 12 or 13.
12 who made it to the adulthood, but 15 altogether.
And a sister that passed.
A sister that passed, yes, and a brother that passed also. And there are only 7 of them who are now living. But we had a father who was a wholesale produce merchant and also a deacon in the church. We had a mother, neither one of which finished high school. We had a mother who was a devoted Christian, who trusted God to rear her children. We were reared in a church environment by a mother who had such strong faith that she turned everything over to God. As a youngster, I was quite ill. The doctors said that I would not make it through age 6. My mother tells me this, or my mother told me this. One night, she was on her way back from the grocery store and stopped at a storefront church. storefront churches, the churches that occupied buildings that had been discarded something. And she said she doesn't even remember the name of the minister. All she remembers is what the minister told her to do. The minister said, come down on faith and ask God for only one thing, something that you cannot do yourself. My mother tells me she went to the altar and she prayed, Lord, heal my son. And from that day to this, whatever I had, I have not had again.
Wow.
And from 5 years of age, I've been granted 93 years. How do I account for that? I cannot. But I believe that God intended when I was 5 to allow me the privilege of making it to 94. That's what my mother told me. In 1951, I was involved in an automobile accident in Mexico. And I was brought back to Houston to the St. Elizabeth Hospital. They put me through all kinds of tests. They couldn't discover what was wrong. My doctor called my mother in Virginia and said, if you expect to see your son alive, you had better rush to Houston. I was a mother's child, and even at my church, I was their child.
Okay.
And so I would not go to the hospital unless a member of the church stayed with me 24 hours. And so they divided up the schedules.
Right.
And this was on a Friday night. One of my deacons was in the corner, and I was in the bed. There was a crucifix ahead of me. And I looked at that crucifix, and I said, God, you've touched my body once. You can touch it again. And then I turned to Deacon Johnson. I said, Deacon Johnson, I'm all right. And when they take me for the test tomorrow, they will discover nothing wrong with me.
Faith.
That next day, I was taken to the hospital. And after all the series of tests, I said to the doctor, doctor, I know this is a little unethical, but can you tell me what you found? And the doctor said, well, it's a little too early for me to tell you that. But preliminary, all I can say is that all I discovered is that your brain activity is 10 times a lot faster than other people, but other than that, you're all right. My mother was on her way from Richmond to Houston on the train. And she said that as she moved and she pulled her, she would pull out her hair and her hair would fall out. I had never missed Christmas with my mother. When she arrived in Houston, I was released from the hospital. And where I stayed, Christmas morning, we had breakfast and dinner together. And I was all right. She made arrangements for my funeral before she left, because she was sure that she would bring my body back. But she went on back to Richmond. I got out of the hospital, and I haven't been in the hospital since for anything other than usual normal procedures. Now, you can interpret it any way you want to. But I feel that God did it. And he did it for a reason.
Absolutely.
To provide me with the opportunity of sharing this moment right now with you. A person I don't even know, never knew.
Right.
But he had the opportunity now to interact with. And that has been the case throughout the years since 1951 when it happened.
Wow. I feel...
Now that's something of my background. And just last Saturday, we celebrated our 60th wedding anniversary.
60th.
Our 60th wedding anniversary. Mrs. Clarice Freeman, who has been at my side for these 60 years, and therefrom God has blessed us to rear
Three children.
One, Thomas, who is now in Florida. Carter, who was a musician in Seehofer, Germany, but is temporarily here. And my daughter, Carlotta Freeman, who is a practicing psychiatrist.
Is that
and
right?
Incidentally, the treasurer of the National Medical Association. All of whom have a sensitivity to serving other people. Right. My two sons are responsible for two granddaughters and two grandsons.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. So the legacy continues.
I hope so. At least the name is our boys. Yes.
That is fantastic. What a wonderful time I've actually had.
I'd like to mention also,
here.
Not just the family, but my educational training, because students don't realize these days the value of the HBCU school. The doors are wide open to the run to us, but I attended an HBCU school, Virginia Union University in Richmond, Virginia. I graduated magna cum laude in English, and then I went to Andover Newton Theological Seminary in Newton Center, Massachusetts, which at that time was the leading theological seminary. Okay. And Howard Thurman, and both Howard Thurman and Mordecai Johnson wanted to go to Andover Newton, but the doors were closed. They couldn't. Dick McKinney was the first one to integrate theological training in the North.
Okay.
And I followed the second class with others. And I finished from Andover Newton as top man in the class, cum laude. And then I went to Boston University and Harvard. As an honor student, we had the option of attending either Boston University or Harvard for our senior year. And I chose to split it. So I went to Boston University and also went to Harvard.
Wow.
Now, at the age of 15, I had already made up my mind where I was going to school. And one of the schools was Yale University.
Okay.
But I didn't make it to Yale. And the reason I didn't go to Yale is that the University of Chicago offered me a fellowship and Yale offered me a scholarship. And there's a difference between the two.
A fellowship and a scholarship.
I went to the University of Chicago and received the doctorate degree there. It was the first degree granted by anybody in the nation in the field of homiletics.
Really? Now, what is that?
There were people who were teaching homiletics who were not trained in homiletics professionally. That's the study and art of preaching.
Okay.
It was the first and perhaps the only PhD in homiletics. The very person under whom I studied had a DDS, but not a PhD in homiletics. And everybody else had pattern examples of what the preliminary examination was going to be like. My work became the pattern for what others would follow.
Wow.
I had no guide, but my work became the guide for others. And I was granted the degree of PhD by the University of Chicago. And following that, I did postdoctoral study in Vienna, Austria, and then I did institutional study in Liberia, Ghana, Kenya, and so forth. That's my educational background.
All over the world. Wow. Dr. Freeman, thank you so much.
Well, thank you for the opportunity of interacting with you.
It has truly been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you.
One final question. If there are three things, or three nuggets of advice that you would want to give or share with the world for the world to become better?
The recognition of the value of life will be one. Life has gotten so cheap that we can snuff it out. Even over a pair of shoes.
Can you say that again?
Life has become so cheap that we can snuff it out over a little thing like a pair of shoes. Life is precious and ought to be not only preserved, but respected. So wherever you see life, there ought to be stirred in you an appreciation for life and the recognition that it is so precious and so valuable that it ought to be preserved rather than destroyed. A second thing I would say is the recognition that you're not in the world by yourself. You are one of others in the world. And your behavior should be of such a nature that it recognizes others so that you're not always selfish and wanting things for yourself. You ought to be willing to share things with others. A third thing I would say is to remember that love is the way, not hate. For hate leads to destruction and even to war. But love is the way to peace. Life becomes worthwhile because it is undergirded by love. Those are three of the things that come to mind when you ask me the question, what did I say?
And you know what? I'm going to hold those three things very close to my heart and think about them. Certainly, as I know the wonderful guests that have had the opportunity to watch this show today will do. I hope you guys have enjoyed this edition of Let's Talk About It with Dr. Thomas Freeman as much as I have. I knew that so much wisdom would be imparted in me through this opportunity to speak with the legendary Dr. Thomas Freeman. You can certainly find out more information about us. That's the Let's Talk About It at Let's Talk About It 12tv at gmail.com. That's Let's Talk About It 12tv at gmail.com. Until next time, we'll see you then.